and tortured her for 72 hours straight. No sleep, no food, no light, just pressure, pain, and the belief that eventually everyone breaks. But what they didn't know was that the woman strapped to that chair was a Navy SEAL, not just trained to survive, trained to never surrender, trained to never speak, trained to never break. Before we show you how far they went and what she did in return, make sure you're subscribed with the bell icon turned on and drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Because this one, you're not ready for how it ends. They were only supposed to be in country for 48 hours.
Every single one of your tactics has
in and out, clean and quiet, no complications. But Lieutenant Commander Nadia Cole should have known better. 22 years in the Navy, 15 of them with the teams, and she'd learned that the missions that look simple on paper were usually the ones that got you killed. The objective sat in the northeast corner of a city whose name nobody could pronounce properly. The locals called it Dakur, but on the classified maps, it was just another red dot in a region marked low priority, which, in military speak, meant no backup, no press coverage, and definitely no congressional oversight. At 0400 hours, rain hammered the broken skyline like artillery. Oil drums burned in the alleyways, belching chemical smoke that clung to the inside of your nostrils and stayed there for hours. The stench mixed with cordite and something else, something organic and wrong that you learned to ignore after your first deployment. 8 operators moved through the ruins in staggered formation. 5 Marines, 2 SEALs, and Nadia. She took rear security near what used to be a bakery, her rifle tight against her shoulder, eyes scanning the dark windows above. The rhythm was perfect. Sweep, signal, advance. Like a dance they'd rehearsed 100 times. But Nadia had been doing this long enough to read the signs. The timing felt off. Buildings that should have been empty showed faint heat signatures, dust patterns on windowsills that looked too fresh, too disturbed, and underneath it all, that prickle between her shoulder blades that every operator learned to trust. The feeling that someone was watching. She tapped a pattern against her thigh holster. Morse code for something's wrong. The team leader, a Marine captain named Morrison, caught the signal and held up a closed fist. Everyone froze. That's when the world exploded. The flashbang came from behind them, not from the building they were approaching. White light and thunder that turned the night inside out. Before the ringing in her ears had even started, automatic weapons opened up from 3 different directions. Ambush! Fall back! Morrison's voice cut through the chaos, but 2 of his Marines were already down, dark stains spreading across their uniforms. Nadia moved on instinct. 22 years of muscle memory kicked in as she pivoted toward the nearest muzzle flash and put 3-round center mass into a shadow in an upper window. The figure dropped, but there were more, always more. Go, 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 she shouted, laying down suppressive fire as the survivors bounded toward the extraction point. Her weapon bucked against her shoulder, spent brass singing off the concrete around her feet. But it was too late. Someone had sold them out. The kill zone was too perfect, too coordinated. This wasn't random militia. This was professionals with inside intelligence, waiting in exactly the right positions. Barnes, the other SEAL, caught a round in the throat. He made a sound like air escaping from a tire, then crumpled against a wall. Morrison was dragging a wounded Marine, blood streaming down his face from shrapnel cuts. "I'll cover!" Nadia yelled. "Move!" She stepped into the open, rifle chattering as she swept left to right. Her magazine ran dry. She dropped it, slammed in a fresh one, raised the weapon again. Something hit her from the side. Hard. A rifle butt? A thrown brick? She never saw it coming. The world tilted sideways, colors bleeding into black. When she woke up, she wasn't in Dakur anymore. She was somewhere beneath it. The first thing she noticed wasn't the pain, though there was plenty of that. It was the cold. Not the bite-your-skin kind of cold, but the deep, bone-settling chill that came from thick concrete and no sunlight. It smelled like mildew and old fear, with an undertone of diesel fuel and disinfectant. Lieutenant Commander Nadia Cole opened her eyes slowly, methodically cataloging everything her senses could tell her. Overhead, a single bare bulb swayed from a frayed wire, casting shadows that danced across walls built for silence. No windows, no outside noise, the faint hum of a generator somewhere distant. Underground. Definitely underground. Soviet-era construction, maybe. The kind of bunker that didn't officially exist on any blueprint. She tried to move and immediately understood her situation. Arms zip-tied behind a metal chair. The plastic cutting into her wrists. Ankles bound to the chair legs, but with enough slack to shift positions. They'd left her some range of motion. A mistake, if they knew what they were dealing with. But they didn't. Not yet. She tested each restraint carefully, feeling for weak points without making it obvious. The chair was steel reinforced, bolted to the floor. The zip ties were military grade. Whoever had planned this understood basic prisoner security. What they didn't understand was that she'd been trained for this. SEER school. Survival, evasion, resistance, escape. Every SEAL went through it, but Nadia had taken the advanced course 3 times. She'd spent 6 days in simulated captivity, learning exactly how much pressure the human mind could take before it cracked. This was different, though. No instructors, no safe words, no extraction at the end of the week. This was real. The door groaned open on rusted hinges. 2 men entered first, guards, clearly. One was stocky, with the shoulders of a brawler. The other tall and gaunt, with the nervous energy of someone trying to prove himself. Behind them came a third figure that made something cold settle in Nadia's stomach. He wore a white coat, not clean white, the faded stained white of old Soviet medical facilities. His hands were gloved, steady, and his eyes held nothing at all. "Ah," he said in careful, practiced English. "She awakens." Nadia said nothing. In SEER training, they called it the gray rock technique. Give them nothing to work with. No emotion, no reaction, no information. "You are Lieutenant Commander Nadia Cole, United States Navy SEAL. Embedded Intelligence Liaison with Joint Task Force Kestrel." He consulted a clipboard like he was reading a medical chart. 12 confirmed deployments, fluent in Farsi and Russian. Purple Heart recipient. Still nothing. "I am a doctor," he continued, moving closer. "You may call me that. Or not call me anything at all. It will not matter in the end." He tilted his head, studying her face. "You were taken 73 minutes ago. We waited for you to regain consciousness naturally. A courtesy we do not often extend." Nadia held his gaze, her voice steady when she finally spoke. "I want to contact the International Red Cross." One of the guards laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. The doctor's expression didn't change. "We are somewhat outside the jurisdiction of international law, I'm afraid. Here, there is only necessity." A speaker crackled to life somewhere above them. A woman's voice, calm and cold with an American accent that made Nadia's blood run colder. "Subject is conscious and responsive. Begin with basic disorientation protocols." The voice, not here in person but watching, probably behind one-way glass or on video feed. The real interrogator, letting the doctor do the dirty work while she analyzed every micro-expression, every tell. The light suddenly blazed white, bright enough to see through the closed eyelids. A low-frequency tone began humming through the walls, not loud enough to cause immediate damage, but persistent enough to scramble concentration. The doctor stepped back, hands clasped behind him like a professor beginning a lecture. "We require very little from you, Commander. Simply the details of your team's next operational target. Location, timing, personnel. Provide this information, and your ordeal ends." Nadia blinked once against the harsh light. "Name, rank, and serial number." He sighed, genuinely disappointed. A pity. It could have been much simpler. The door slammed shut, leaving her alone with the light and the sound, and the beginning of a very long education in exactly how much the human body could endure. Time became elastic. There was no clock, no windows, no way to mark the passage of hours, except by the rhythm of her own heartbeat and the steady drip of water from a pipe in the corner. Nadia counted everything, breaths, drips, the intervals between guard changes. It was an old trick from survival training. Keep your mind occupied with patterns, and it couldn't focus on the pain. They started with the basics: no food, then too much water forced down her throat until her stomach cramped, strobe lights that made her vision blur and dance, sound loops of explosions and screams and classical music, all layered together into an audio nightmare. The voice came through the speakers regularly now. Always calm, always reasonable. Your team is listed as KIA, Commander. The mission failed. No one is looking for you. Your family thinks you're dead. Do you want them to be right? This can end whenever you choose to end it. Nadia kept her eyes on a chip in the concrete wall, where 2 blocks didn't align properly. A tiny imperfection that became her anchor. She focused on it while the voice tried to worm into her head, while the lights burned her retinas, while her body screamed for rest. Name, rank, serial number, she whispered to herself. A mantra, a prayer, a promise. The guards brought food eventually. A thin paste that smelled like fish oil and motor fuel served on a cracked plastic plate. She didn't touch it. First rule of detention: don't eat anything until you've seen them eat it first. Control the variables you can control. Hours later, or maybe days, time had lost all meaning. The doctor returned. He didn't speak at first, just stood behind her chair where she couldn't see him. She could hear him breathing, slow and steady, could smell the antiseptic soap he used to wash his hands. Then he moved into her field of vision, carrying a small metal case that he set on the table with careful precision. "I take no pleasure in this," he said almost kindly, "but I find that pain is a remarkably effective teacher." Nadia stared straight ahead. Name, rank, serial number. He opened the case. Inside, nestled in foam padding, were instruments that glinted under the harsh light. Surgical tools, electrical devices, things designed to cause very specific kinds of pain without causing death. "Do you know how long the human mind can maintain coherent thought under extreme duress?" he asked conversationally. "The research varies, but most subjects begin to break down after approximately 36 hours of continuous stress." She didn't answer. He selected a device that looked like a modified cattle prod. "You will tell us everything we wish to know. The only variable is how much of yourself remains intact when you do." Nadia turned her head slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. "You couldn't handle 5 minutes of what I've already survived." It was a mistake. The first crack in her gray rock facade. His smile was gentle, almost paternal. "We shall see." Then the lights went out, and the real work began. The second day started without warning. One moment she was drifting in the exhausted half-sleep that was all her body could manage. The next she was gasping as ice-cold water hammered down from overhead pipes. They'd stripped her down to her undershirt and pants during one of the blackout periods, and now the water hit her bare skin like frozen needles. Hypothermia was a weapon they understood well. Drop the core body temperature just a few degrees, and cognitive function collapsed. But they'd underestimated what 22 years of Navy training had taught her about cold water survival. Count the seconds, control the breathing, contract the major muscle groups to generate heat. The first 100 seconds were the worst. After that, the body adapted, mostly. The doctor entered while she was still dripping, carrying the same cattle prod from before. No preamble this time, no threats or explanations, just electricity. The first jolt hit her ribs, sending white fire through every nerve ending. Her body convulsed against the restraints, muscles seizing involuntarily. She bit down hard on her tongue to keep from screaming, tasting blood. He waited for her breathing to steady, then hit her again, behind the knee this time, sending cramps through her entire leg. "You should speak," he murmured, almost apologetically. "This is crude work, unnecessary." But the voice insists on traditional methods. Nadia spat blood onto the concrete floor. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse but unbroken. "Name, rank, serial number." The prod sparked again. This time she was ready for it, had positioned her muscles to distribute the current rather than fight it. It still hurt. Electricity always hurt. But she'd learned to ride the pain instead of letting it ride her. By the fourth shock, she wasn't even flinching. The doctor stepped back, studying her with something that might have been professional curiosity. "Interesting," he said. "Most subjects are begging by now. Most subjects aren't SEALs." Another mistake, another crack in the facade. But she was past caring about perfect operational security now. Let them know what they were dealing with. The voice returned later, piped through the overhead speakers with that same maddening calm. "You're stalling, Commander. We have satellite imagery of your unit's forward operating bases. We know your command structure. Simply confirm what we already know and this ends." Nadia coughed, water and blood mixing in her throat. "Confirm this," she rasped, and gave them a single finger gesture that needed no translation. The light snapped off again. In the darkness, she let her mind drift to better places. The obstacle course at Coronado Beach, where she'd first learned she was stronger than she'd ever imagined. The faces of teammates who trusted her with their lives. The weight of the trident pin on her uniform the day she'd earned the right to call herself a SEAL. Pain was temporary. Honor was forever. When the baton came next, a weighted rod that the stocky guard swung with practiced efficiency, she absorbed each blow with tight core muscles and controlled breathing. When they hoisted her from the chair into a stress position, arms wrenched behind her back and forced to balance on her knees, she shifted her weight to preserve circulation. They were methodical, professional, but they were also impatient, and impatience led to mistakes. The third day brought silence. Not the temporary quiet between torture sessions, but true silence. No dripping pipe, no voice, no guards stomping in the corridor outside, just stillness. For a moment, Nadia wondered if she was dead. Then the door opened. A single guard entered, the tall, nervous one, carrying a clean towel and a tray of actual food, warm tea that smelled like mint, fresh bread, a boiled egg that was still steaming. Her hands were unbound. So were her feet. She flexed her fingers slowly, feeling the burn where the zip ties had cut circulation for days. The guard set the tray down and backed away, hands visible, non-threatening. This was new, and in her experience, new tactics meant desperation. A soft chime sounded from the speakers. Then the voice returned, but different now, gentler, almost maternal. "Lieutenant Commander Cole, you've endured more than anyone should have to. Truly." Nadia remained still, every muscle coiled despite her exhaustion. This was the most dangerous part. When they tried kindness after brutality. When they offered hope after despair. "You've lasted longer than our projections indicated. Longer than anyone in our files. But your ordeal doesn't have to continue." Pause. Calculated for maximum psychological impact. "We intercepted communications from your command structure. The operation was declared a failure. Your team is listed as KIA. There will be no rescue attempt." Nadia let her shoulders sag slightly. Not dramatic, just the natural slump of someone carrying too much weight for too long. "Your country has moved on, Commander. Your mission is over, but you can still choose how this ends." She reached slowly for the tea, letting her hand tremble just enough to sell the performance. The liquid was actually warm, actually mint. They were trying to build rapport now to make her associate them with relief instead of pain. Classic interrogation psychology, and it might have worked on someone else. The doctor returned later, his manner completely changed. Gone was the clinical detachment, replaced by something resembling compassion. "You've shown remarkable fortitude," he said, setting a single sheet of paper on the table. "But continuing this serves no one. Your team is gone. Your mission has been compromised. What happens next is entirely your choice." The paper was a simple form, name of a U.S. forward operating base in the region, a signature line, nothing more. "One signature," he said gently. "Confirm what we already know, and you can leave here with your dignity intact." Nadia leaned forward, studying the document. Her hand hovered over the pen he'd placed beside it. She let her fingers shake as she reached for it, then stopped. "You know what?" she whispered, looking up to meet his eyes. "What? You got the wrong seal." She leaned back in the chair, leaving the pen untouched. Because the right one would never have been stupid enough to get captured in the first place, huh? The doctor's face hardened. The voice crackled to life, colder than it had ever been. There will be severe consequences for continued defiance. Nadia said nothing, because this was the moment she'd been building toward for 3 days. Let them think they'd broken her down. Let them ease security. Let them bring her to the recording room where they'd want her compliant and visible. That's where she'd make her move. Not with her hands, though those would do their part, but with the one thing they'd never thought to search for. They should have checked her teeth more carefully. Not just a visual inspection. Anyone could hide pills or razor blades in their mouth. They should have x-rayed her jaw, used metal detectors, been suspicious of the slightly off-color molar on her lower left side. If they had, they might have found the titanium capsule, no bigger than a grain of rice, surgically implanted during her last medical review and activated by sustained pressure from her tongue. A microtransmitter that sent out a low-frequency ping every 20 minutes, undetectable unless you knew exactly what to look for. Standard issue for SEAL commanders operating in hostile territory. The signal had been pulsing for 3 days now, and 500 miles away, Commander Leo Torres had been tracking every ping. The operations center aboard the carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt hummed with controlled urgency. Banks of computer screens showed satellite feeds, communication intercepts, and a slowly tightening grid around Nadia's last known position. Torres stood over the main display, red marker in hand, drawing circles on a digital map. Signal's been consistent for 72 hours, reported the intel officer. Emanating from this grid square, old Soviet-era construction, mostly underground, urban decay topside, but the thermal imaging shows active power sources below ground. Could be a trap, someone said. Torres nodded grimly. Doesn't matter. She's alive, and she's one of ours. He turned to address the room. Tango Echo 2 is already staged and ready. We go in at 0200. Full tactical insertion, silent approach. Primary objective is extraction of friendly personnel. Secondary objective is intelligence gathering. A young lieutenant raised his hand. Sir, what if she's been compromised? Turned. Torres fixed him with a stare that could have melted steel. Son, that woman has been through things that would break most people before breakfast. If she's still pinging, she's still fighting. And if she's still fighting, we're going to get her out. Below ground, Nadia was preparing too. They'd moved her to a different room, larger, with better lighting and what looked suspiciously like camera equipment, the kind of setup used for recorded confessions or propaganda videos, which meant they planned to put her in front of a lens soon, which meant proximity to multiple guards, probably weapons within reach, and the kind of staged environment that offered opportunities for someone who knew how to create them. She'd let her posture slump, let exhaustion show in her movements. They needed to believe she was broken, that 72 hours of professional interrogation had finally worn down her resistance. What they didn't realize was that every minute of those 72 hours had been building toward this moment. The room had been carefully arranged for optics. 2 portable floodlights on metal stands cast harsh shadows across a backdrop that looked like it had been painted by someone who'd never seen a real military installation. A steel table, 1 chair, and a camera, old school analog with actual tape, the kind that couldn't be digitally manipulated later. They wanted this to look authentic. Nadia sat where they directed her, hands unbound, wrists showing the purple bruises from 3 days of zip ties. She was wearing a clean shirt, not new, just unstained, the kind of thing you put on a prisoner when you want them to look like a participant rather than a victim. The voice was no longer disembodied. She stood behind the camera now, a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and the kind of bureaucratic coldness that came from issuing orders you never had to personally carry out. This is beneficial for everyone involved, she said without irony. Your cooperation demonstrates good faith. It changes how your government responds to future negotiations. Nadia looked directly into the camera lens. Is that what you think this is? A negotiation? The woman slid a typed statement across the table. Read this, clearly and without deviation. We'll begin when you're ready. Nadia glanced at the paper. Standard propaganda language, confessions of espionage, calls for American withdrawal, denunciations of her own mission, the kind of thing intelligence services had been forcing captured personnel to read since the Cold War. She picked up the paper slowly as if her hands were shaking from exhaustion. Let them see weakness. Let them relax. Begin, the woman ordered. Nadia raised her eyes to the camera and spoke in a clear, steady voice. My name is Lieutenant Commander Nadia Cole, United States Navy, serial number 456789123. For the past 72 hours, I have been held in violation of the Geneva Convention by unlawful combatants operating without legitimate governmental authority. Not that, the woman snapped. Read the prepared. Nadia kept talking. I have been subjected to torture, deprivation, and psychological abuse in an attempt to extract classified military information. I have provided no such information and will continue to provide none. The guards were moving now, reaching for weapons, moving toward the table. Too late. Nadia's movement was explosive and precise, the product of thousands of hours of close-quarters combat training compressed into a single moment of perfect violence. She grabbed the back of the chair, pivoted up and around, and drove the metal edge into the closest guard's throat. The impact crushed his windpipe and dropped him instantly. The second guard lunged for his sidearm. Nadia was already inside his reach, elbow driven hard into his temple, hand stripping the pistol from his holster as he collapsed. The woman behind the camera screamed. Nadia turned toward her, weapon raised, voice deadly calm. Get down, now! The cameraman, a local who'd probably been hired for a few dollars, dropped to the floor immediately. The woman bolted for the door. Nadia's first shot took out the doorframe 6 inches from her head. A warning round that sent concrete chips flying. The woman froze, hands raised, face pale with shock, but Nadia wasn't looking at her anymore. She was listening, and through the thick concrete walls, she could hear the most beautiful sound in the world. The whisper of suppressed gunfire. SEALs. The door exploded inward in a shower of splinters and smoke. 4 figures in full tactical gear poured through the gap, laser sights cutting through the dust, movements coordinated with the precision of a Swiss watch. Nadia dropped the pistol and raised her hands as red dots painted her chest. Friendly, friendly, she called out. The lead operator's weapon came down immediately. Lieutenant Commander Cole? She gave a sharp nod. Package secured, he reported into his comm. She's mobile and armed. Repeat, she's mobile and armed. They didn't rush to help her, didn't ask if she was okay, didn't waste time with medical assessments or emotional check-ins. They treated her like what she was, a fellow professional who'd done her job under impossible circumstances. Can you move? The team leader asked. I can lead, Nadia replied, because she'd memorized every hallway, every exit, every potential ambush point during her 3 days of captivity. They fell in behind her without question. The extraction was textbook perfect. 4-man team in diamond formation, Nadia calling out guard positions and structural weaknesses as they moved. They encountered resistance twice, poorly positioned militia with more enthusiasm than training. The SEALs handled them with surgical precision. No wasted ammunition, no unnecessary casualties, no drama. Just professional violence, applied exactly where it was needed. They reached the surface as dawn was breaking over the ruined city. A Black Hawk sat in a hastily cleared landing zone, rotors already turning, Marines in full battle rattle providing perimeter security. Nadia walked up the ramp under her own power and took a seat on the canvas bench, finally allowing herself to feel the exhaustion that had been building for 3 days. A medic approached with supplies, but she waved him off. I'll let you know if I stop breathing, she said. Commander Torres climbed aboard, headset around his neck, dust coating his gear. You good? He asked. I've got everything, she replied. Complete facility layout, guard rotations, communication protocols, prisoner intake procedures. I memorized their entire operation. Torres keyed his radio. Command, package is secure and intact. Primary objective achieved. She's got a full intelligence download ready for immediate debrief. As the helicopter lifted off, banking toward the carrier group waiting offshore, Nadia looked down through the open ramp at the compound below. Smoke was rising from several buildings. Figures in tactical gear were zip-tying prisoners and loading them into transport vehicles. The doctor and his assistant, the woman with the cold voice, the guards who'd thought torture was just another day at the office, justice, swift and thorough, but more than that, proof of something those people had never understood. You don't break a seal by taking away their freedom. You break them by taking away their honor. And Nadia Cole's honor had never been for sale. The carrier's medical bay was a study in controlled chaos. Nadia sat on an examination table while a Navy corpsman checked her vitals and documented her injuries: bruised ribs, minor lacerations, dehydration, and the kind of psychological stress that would take weeks to fully process. But she was intact, mind, body, and spirit. "You sure you don't want something for the pain?" the corpsman asked, noting the purple bruises that covered her arms and torso. "I've had worse," she replied, and meant it. Commander Torres appeared in the doorway, a laptop tucked under his arm. "You ready to download everything you've got?" She nodded. For the next 4 hours, Nadia provided the most detailed intelligence brief of her career. Floor plans drawn from memory, personnel descriptions accurate down to scars and tattoos, communication protocols, command structures, and operational procedures that would give U.S. forces a complete picture of how the enemy operated. But more than information, she'd brought back something else: proof that even in the darkest moments, when everything seemed lost and hopeless, the values that made someone a SEAL didn't just survive, they conquered. Later, as the sun set over the Mediterranean, Nadia stood on the carrier's flight deck watching F/A-18S launch into the evening sky. The salt air felt clean in her lungs, the deck solid beneath her feet. A young petty officer approached, clearly nervous about interrupting a SEAL commander's moment of solitude. "Ma'am, there's a call for you. Admiral wants to debrief personally." She nodded, but didn't move immediately. "Ma'am?" the petty officer asked. "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "How did you... 72 hours of that, and you walked out like it was nothing. How does someone do that?" Nadia turned to look at him. Really look at him. Young face, maybe 22 or 23. The kind of kid who'd joined the Navy to serve something bigger than himself, but hadn't yet learned what that really meant. "It wasn't nothing," she said quietly. "It was everything. Everything I'd trained for, everything I'd sworn to uphold. Everything that makes this uniform mean something." She paused, watching another Hornet catapult into the sky. "They thought they could break me by taking away my freedom. But freedom isn't something you can take from a SEAL. It's something you carry inside you. And as long as you remember that, as long as you hold on to what you're fighting for, they can hurt your body. But they can never touch who you are." The petty officer nodded, not fully understanding yet, but filing the words away for later. "Thank you, ma'am." Nadia smiled, the first genuine smile she'd managed in 3 days. "Thank you for bringing me home." Could you have held out for 72 hours? Do you think it's the training that makes someone unbreakable? Or something deeper than that? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. If this story reminded you why some people are willing to sacrifice everything for honor, smash that like button and subscribe for daily uploads of stories that matter. And if you know someone who still thinks toughness is about talking loud and acting tough, share this video with them. Because real strength isn't about what you can dish out. It's about what you can take and still keep standing. Your next story is already queued up and waiting. Same time tomorrow, same lessons that need learning. I'll see you there.